Today I'm going to talk about something that crops up in the comments quite a lot from time to time, and it goes something along the lines of this. I'm confused. Do you use kilometres or miles in the UK? Alternatively, why do you use kilometres for your rides when the UK uses miles? Now, there's no one short simple answer why I use kilometres, but today I hope to explain why. And it's not just because I'm a continental dandy. For the record, all of the road signs here in the UK are in miles, but that doesn't mean it's quite as imperial as perhaps you'd first think. For instance, if you were to go to the local supermarket, you'd have a choice. You could buy your meat, your cheese, your vegetables and whatnot in either grams or pounds. If you were to watch the weather report, the temperatures quoted would be in Celsius, and that's obviously metric. If you went down to the local petrol station to fill your car up, you'd be buying fuel in litres. But if I were to go to the pub just opposite me here, I'd be buying beer in good old-fashioned pints. Now, I grew up here in the UK, and obviously that meant that I was brought up using miles. So where did the kilometres come from? Well, I suppose it could all be traced back to when I was a teenager growing up in the late 1970s, early 1980s. At that time, I spent a lot of time with my best chum in the world, a chap called Carl, and we would watch the Tour de France together in his house. Now, the thing you need to know about Carl is that although he was born in the UK, his parents were German, and the household that he lived in was exclusively metric. And again, you know, obviously watching the race from France, all of the measurements there were in metric and kilometres. And for me, the connection between cycling and the metric kilometres was very much established. Plus, at that time, Carl and I got our first ever road bikes, and the little adventures that we'd go cycling on, naturally we would measure those in kilometres. Fast forward 15 years or so, and it's the mid-1990s, and I'm at university in France, so obviously that's all in metric, and my other half at the time was Danish, so of course that was all metric as well. We lived in Denmark for on and off for about 12 years, and then when we moved back to the UK, the household was metric. So if we were cooking something, we'd measure all of the ingredients out in grams, for instance, and if she wanted to know how far away something was, I would tell her in kilometres, because, well, basically that was what she understood, even though we were both driving UK standard cars where the speedometer registered the distance and speeds in miles. But if you look very carefully underneath the miles, it does have it marked in kilometres as well. And this also goes to explain why I say kilometres and not the more familiar kilometres. Essentially, that's the Danish translation, and that's what I learnt. Oh dear, boy, daily. But of course, cycling is no longer the cult sport that it once was when Carl and I were watching it in his mum's living room on World of Sport in 1982. But the races that we're watching are still coming from places like France, Spain and Italy, and the distances are being measured in kilometres. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that I would guess that the riders, or 90% of the riders in the professional peloton, come from countries where they measure distance in kilometres as well. So that's what they understand and that's what they use. Even the Tour of Britain, when they hold it here in the UK, the distance is measured in kilometres. And that just goes to show how closely linked cycling and distances in kilometres are linked. You could argue that I should just measure my rides in miles and have done with it. And okay, yep, that would make a lot of sense for people watching in the US and the UK. But as far as I'm aware, the UK and the US are about the only two places left in the world that measure distance in miles. YouTube's an international platform, so for people watching the vlogs in places like Australia, New Zealand and Canada, they understand kilometres a lot better, and it just makes a lot more sense as well to quote the rides in kilometres. And similarly, I've had quotes from people saying things like, well, the UK's left the EU now, so you really should be measuring your rides in miles. On this point, let me be crystal clear. That's not going to happen. And nor do I want to get the road signs changed from miles to kilometres. I understand miles, they understand miles, and let's just leave it at that. If you really don't understand kilometres, then we all have calculators on our phones, and all you need to do is take the distance in kilometres, multiply it by 0.62, and then you have it in miles. Simples. I know for some the miles and kilometre debate is pretty divisive and polarising, but for me it just seems natural to record my rides in kilometres. And in fact, if I hear somebody else talking about kilometres, I just naturally assume they're a cyclist or maybe a scientist. So if you've enjoyed this vlog, please click on the video coming up. And if you'd like to support the channel in some way, please like and share, and maybe even consider subscribing, because it really does help the channel out. And don't forget to click the bell icon so you don't miss any of my regular weekly uploads. Thanks for watching.